The moment the front door closed, the house felt too quiet, like a theater after the final scene. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the loud stories gone. Emily Carter stood in the kitchen, one hand resting on the counter, the other holding a dish towel she had forgotten to use. Her heart was still racing, and she didn't know why. Something had shifted tonight. She felt it in her chest, heavy and unexpected. The dinner party had been Mark's idea, a work celebration. Promotions, deadlines met, smiles that lasted just long enough. Emily had done what she always did: cooked, hosted, listened. She smiled at the right moments, laughed at the right jokes, and made sure everyone felt welcome. She was good at that. Too good. From the corner of her eye, she noticed a shadow near the hallway. Someone was still there. "Emily," a voice said, calm and low. She turned quickly. Daniel Reed, Mark's colleague, stood near the doorway, his jacket folded neatly over his arm. He looked slightly uncomfortable, like he had stayed behind by mistake. "Oh," Emily said, surprised. "I thought everyone left." "I was just heading out," Daniel replied. "I didn't mean to linger." She nodded, trying to slow her breathing. "No problem. Can I get you anything? Water?" "No," he said gently. "I actually wanted to thank you." She smiled politely. "For dinner. For everything," he said. "It's the way you made everyone feel at home." "Not everyone notices those things, but I do." The words landed softly, but they stayed. Emily felt a strange warmth rise in her chest. She told herself it was nothing, just a compliment. They stood there, the space between them quiet but alive. The kitchen light buzzed faintly overhead. Outside, a car passed by, tires humming on the road. "I won't take long," Daniel said, his voice careful. I felt like if I didn't say this now, I'd regret it." Emily's fingers tightened around the towel. "Say what?" Daniel took a slow breath. "I've known Mark for years. Talks about you often. He says you're strong, reliable, kind. I always assumed that was just pride. Night, I realized it's more than that." Her heartbeat grew louder in her ears. "Emily," he continued, "I want to be clear. I respect your marriage. I respect Mark. This isn't a confession, and it's not a request. It's just honesty." She searched his face. There was no arrogance. No expectation. Just sincerity. "I admire you," Daniel said simply, "and I wanted you to know that." Before she could respond, footsteps echoed from upstairs. Mark's voice called. "I'm going to be a few more minutes." That email turned into a mess. Daniel stepped back instantly, creating distance. His expression shifting back to polite calm. "That's all," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. If this was uncomfortable..." "It wasn't," Emily said before she could stop herself. Their eyes met for one brief moment. Then he nodded and walked toward the door. It closed softly behind him. Emily stood alone, her reflection staring back at her from the dark kitchen window. Her hands were shaking. She went upstairs, slipping into bed beside Mark, who was already focused on his laptop again. He reached for her hand without looking, a familiar gesture, comforting but distant. Emily stared at the ceiling. She told herself to forget the moment, to move on. But her mind kept replaying Daniel's words. Not because they crossed a line, but because they stopped before sleep came late and light. The next few days moved fast. Grocery runs, work emails, laundry folded in quiet rooms. Life didn't pause just because something inside her had. Cracked open. Emily found herself noticing small things she had ignored before. How Mark spoke more about work than about feelings. How conversations ended instead of continued. How being together had slowly turned into simply being near. At the office gathering the following week, she saw Daniel again. He was the same professional, distant, respectful. He didn't linger near her, didn't seek her out. When they spoke, it was about safe things, weather, traffic, books, that somehow made it harder. One evening, as Emily sat alone on the couch, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I hope this message is okay." I just wanted to apologize if my words the other night put you in an uncomfortable position. That was never my intent. She stared at the screen for a long time. Then she typed. They didn't make me uncomfortable. The reply came a few minutes later. Thank you for telling me. I promise I won't cross any lines. Emily placed the phone face down on the table, her chest tight. She realized something that scared her, not that Daniel had feelings, but that she had felt seen in a way she hadn't in years. That night, Mark talked about a new project while Emily nodded, smiling at the right moments again. But her mind was elsewhere, somewhere between who she was and who she had forgotten she could be. She lay awake again, staring into the dark, listening to Mark's breathing. The house was quiet, but her heart was not. She didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning of a truth she could no longer ignore. The question hit Mark like a sudden stop on a highway. Are you happy? Emily's voice was calm, but the room felt tight, like the air had been pulled thinner. Mark looked up from his plate, confused. Fork paused halfway. Of course I am. He said, why would you ask that? Emily didn't answer right away. She looked at the familiar walls, the family photos, the life they had built piece by piece. Nothing was broken. That was the problem. Everything worked, but nothing felt alive. I don't know if I am, she said softly. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. Mark leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. Is this about stress? He asked. Work? The party? You've been tired lately. It's not about being tired, Emily said. It's about feeling invisible. Mark frowned. See you? I appreciate you. I know you do, she said. But appreciation isn't the same as connection. That night they talked longer than they had in years. No yelling, no blame. Just honesty that had been waiting too long, Mark admitted. He had gotten comfortable. Emily admitted she had stopped asking for more. They went to bed, exhausted, holding hands, unsure what the next step looked like. The days that followed moved fast but felt strange. Something had been named, and once named, it couldn't be ignored. Emily focused on herself. She took longer walks. She read again. She said no when she needed to. Mark noticed. He tried harder. He listened more. Sometimes it felt hopeful. Other times it felt forced. Then one afternoon, Emily ran into Daniel at a bookstore downtown. It wasn't planned. It never was. They reached for the same book at the same time and laughed, surprised. Emily, he said, stepping back. She replied, smiling despite herself. They stood near the shelves, talking quietly, about books, about change, about how life rarely moves in straight lines. Daniel didn't ask questions he shouldn't. He didn't push. He listened. I meant what I said before, he told her gently. It also meant what I promised. I won't cross lines. I know, Emily said. That's why this is so hard. Daniel nodded. Sometimes the hardest thing is doing nothing. They walked out together, then parted ways without touching, without promises. But Emily carried the weight of the conversation with her all the way home. That evening, Mark cooked dinner. It was awkward, sweet, clumsy. They laughed when he burned the garlic. For a moment, it felt like before. Later, Emily sat alone in the bedroom, looking at her phone. No new messages, just her thoughts. She realized something then. Daniel wasn't the problem. He wasn't the reason her heart felt restless. He was the mirror that showed her what she had been missing in herself. The next week, Emily asked Mark to go for a drive. They parked near the lake where they used to walk years ago. The water was calm, the sky wide. I need to be honest, Emily said. This isn't about someone else. It's about me. I don't know who I became, but I know I'm not done growing. Mark stared at the water. Are you saying you want to leave? I'm saying I don't want to live half awake anymore, she replied. I want us to choose each other again, or admit we can't. Mark swallowed hard. I don't want to lose you. Then don't, she said. But don't keep me either. Meet me. They sat there a long time. Change didn't happen overnight. They went to counseling, They argued. They learned new habits and unlearned old ones. Some days felt strong, others fragile. Emily didn't see Daniel often after that. When she did, it was brief and respectful. One last conversation happened by chance months later outside a cafe. "You look different," Daniel said. "I feel different," she replied. He smiled. "I'm glad." "So am I," she said honestly. They said goodbye, knowing it was a real ending. A quiet one. That night, Emily came home to Mark, waiting with 2 glasses of wine. They sat together on the porch, watching the sunset. "I'm proud of you," Mark said, "for speaking up." Emily leaned her head on his shoulder. "I was scared." "I still am," he admitted. "So am I," she said. "But I'd rather be scared than asleep." The house felt quiet again, but this time it didn't feel empty. What stunned Emily wasn't what Daniel did after everyone left. It was what his honesty awakened Dot sometimes. The most powerful moments don't break lives apart. They ask you to rebuild them awake, aware and finally choosing yourself.